Okay, so now that we've learned the geometry of truss building, we're going to put it into action on our shed floor. So the first thing you may remember is that we made a line in our model that represented the top of the shed, and it was 4 feet across from edge to edge. In this case, your shed, you're 8 feet across. And so they made a line, and this board was screwed right on that line. The edge, this represents the top of the shed that your truss will be sitting on. Then they came to the center and they made a line. They squared that up so they had their center peak line. And then, because there is, for every 12 inches of run, there is 4 inches of rise, and they have 4 feet of run, or 48 inches of run. That means 4 times 4 gives us 16 inches of rise. And so your truss starts sitting right on the top of the shed. So it needs to rise in that 4 feet, 16 inches. So they measured from the top of their shed up 16 inches and then used a nice level straight edge to draw these lines in. And then after that, they measured off center 1.75 inches so they could mark the edge of their center web piece. And what they did is they took some of their offcuts from their rest cuts and they put these in the corner. Now, you'll notice some of these don't line up with the line exactly, because what they noticed was they made a mistake that is often made. They laid their 2x4s down, and when they traced it, you can get your pencil to go up underneath. And when they traced it like so. And they made it so that instead of their lines being the width of their 2x4, their lines were narrower. And so essentially they realized after the fact that these two lines were too close together. They could not put these boards on these lines. They needed instead to put them a little higher. So what they did is they attached their 3 bottom boards on that straight line. Then they laid their bottom cord inside. Making sure that this is not hanging past. Now this is fairly tight. This is tighter than you would normally want it to be because the board is bowed. Normally that's not something that you want. Normally you want that to sit in there loosely. You don't want it to have a bunch of movement, but you can see how this board is bowed. That's what's causing that problem. So once they got that in, they slid these down to where they touched, and they slid them up to this line for the top. Set these two pieces, did the same thing over here. Then they laid their top cord in. They've got this whole thing situated so that from the end of their shed, quote unquote, to the end of their overhang is 4.5 inches. So that stops their truss tail at the correct length. They did the same thing over here. Now they've got blocks in at the top, so the top can't come up. Top can't come up here, bottom can't go down. Essentially, once all of their pieces are in place here, nothing can move. And when they assemble every single truss inside this jig, they'll be assured that every single truss will be identical. A couple of the things that you need to watch for. Once you get this into place, this top cord should be sitting right down in the corner. If this is too long, if it's hanging out to here, then this will be pushed up as this slides that way, and that'll throw all of this off. So you want to keep an eye on your lines and make sure that you're where you should be. When you get up here, notice this line. When these were first cut, they were maybe 3/16 of an inch long. They were hanging out to here. They had to cut them back to match that line. And so you're gonna have to work these pieces to make sure that they fit. But before you go crazy on cutting things shorter, you wanna verify your lengths. And so what they did was they took some measurements from long point to short point on this piece, and long point to short point on this piece, and they verified that they were indeed equal or very, very close to equal. If you find that one side is off by a ½ inch, then odds are you placed this line in the wrong spot, or you don't have that properly square with your framing square. So before you start making major adjustments to your truss pieces, ensure that you have everything located exactly where it belongs. And then when you put your blocks in, there are two mistakes you can make. One would be to put them in so there's too much room and your trusses can move around too much, meaning that every truss is going to be a little bit different. And the other mistake is to put them so tight so that every piece you have to sort of stomp on it to get it in. This piece here, I can put that in and out easily. This one here, because of the bow in it, I had to actually step on it. Now, if I was stepping on it simply because the boards were too tight, and if I did that on all 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, by the time I got my gussets on and tried to get that thing out of there, you'd never get that removed from the jig. So you have to make them tight without being snug.